Does anybody need to take a quick break? Potty break or anything? All right. And let me jump down here. Six, 7 through 10 says, then I answered, what will be the dividing of the times? Or when will be the end of the first and the beginning of the age that follows? He said to me, from Abraham to Isaac, because Jacob and Esau were born of him. For Jacob's hand held Esau's heel from the beginning. For Esau is the end of this age. So here's a hint. Esau is the end of this age. And Jacob is the beginning of the one that follows. The beginning of a man is his hand, and the end of a man is his heel. Seek nothing else between the heel and the hand, Esdras. So here's something that is talking about an end of an age will be Esau. And if we look at Esau, it is interesting that the book of Jubilees, in looking at the blessing that Isaac gives, and we have that, spelled out partially in Genesis, but Jubilees goes even further and says that Esau would break the yoke that that Jacob has on him, and that he would sin a sin that would result in his complete destruction and elimination. So interesting. So if we look here, that there is an age of Esau, and at the end of that age, you see Jacob coming forth. And some of the other scriptures that we talk about, all of these different lost tribes will be brought out. There will be the I'm thinking about the two rods that join together, Ephraim and exactly. And that that all of the Israelites be drawn out from all of the different the nations, and will be brought back together. All right. It's interesting that now the way that Esdras, sometimes some folks call it second Esdras, third and fourth Esdras, but first Esdras is the book of Ezra. Second Esdras is actually the book of Nehemiah, and then you've got third and fourth Esdras that many folks just combine and call that second Esdras. So it's kind of how it works. So this is going back to this is Ezra 4, and if we're bringing that up. Now, when the adversaries of Judah, I can bring that up, yep. Any questions so far? Covering a lot of different things here. That's for 4. All right, and now the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the children of captivity builded the temple unto the Lord God of Israel. Then they came to Zerubbabel and to the chief of the fathers, and said unto them, Let us build with you, for we seek your God, as ye do, and do sacrifice unto him since the days of Esarhaddon, king of Sur, which brought us up hither. But Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the rest of the chief of the fathers of Israel said unto them, Ye have nothing to do with us to build an house unto our God, but we ourselves together will build unto the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, hath commanded us. Then the people of the land weakened the hands of the people of Judah, and troubled them in building, and hired counselors against them to frustrate their purpose, all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, even until the reign of Darius, king of Persia. And now, when the Israelites would not allow, these other foreign groups, the Edomites, lived in the area, the Ammonites. You had other groups, and they all seemed to want to vie for control of the temple. This is true even in the Hasmoneans, when the Greeks came in, and the Zadokite priesthood that were in charge there at the temple and for the sacrifices that were going on. When the Greeks wanted them to change and follow a calendar that honored the Greek leader and his birthday, and the Zadokite priesthood said, I'm sorry, we have to follow our own calendar, our own system. Well, the Greek authorities kicked them out. And it's interesting that, as I understand it, they didn't allow them to take, any of the different instruments and such, but they allowed them to take the temple scrolls with them. And I support a theory that this Zadokite priesthood actually went down to Qumran, and that the Dead Sea Scrolls, as we so far have been released, many of those were temple scrolls, if I understand correctly. And I go back to a slide here that I kind of put out of place. I jumped over, but let me go back to it. Oops. It's interesting that in Jeremiah's time, that the layout of Jerusalem with the temple and such, and the layout of how things were then Qumran, were laid out almost the same when you look at the temple area, except it's a 180 north to south. And why that is, I don't know why. Why didn't they just lay it out just exactly the same? But as I understand it, it's a 180 of that. So, and also, they found in great abundance, if you, in the Older Testament, I believe it calls out 4 different, spices and such that they would use in the different sacrifices, and the different offerings. You got a question there?
I'm trying to calculate geographically, I can't remember where is Qumran located in reference to Jerusalem.
It's a day's journey. Yeah.
Due
It-
south,
No, it's east by southeast. It's right there, almost where the Jordan River meets the Dead Sea. It's just barely down from that point.
so it's to the east.
It is east by southeast, correct?
So in flipping the temple, and it's just throwing out a theory,
Mm-hmm.
in flipping the temple in Qumran, what would have traditionally been the east wall would now be facing towards Jerusalem,
It's flipped north to south.
right? So the direction that would have been east inside the temple now faces Jerusalem when you flip it.
If you flipped it east to west, that would be true.
Well, your north and south give you a 180 rotation.
Okay, yeah. Depending on where your point is, yeah. Okay, yeah, interesting. And one of the other things that's interesting too, part of the Dead Sea Scrolls writing is that, one of their prophecies is that when the veil in the temple at Jerusalem was rent, they were to stop doing their daily sacrifices, of blood sacrifices, more specifically. And it's my theory that when it talks about in the New Testament that there were many priests that followed the Messiah, I think that those priests were actually out of Qumran rather than Jerusalem, is my theory. And another theory that I have is that John the Baptist was actually based out of Qumran. So I said I'm throwing out a lot of theories here.
I also think that Paul, when he went to Raven, went to Qumran.
And because Qumran in that day and time was also called Damascus.
Correct.
So when Paul was on the road to Damascus, I don't think, in my personal theory, opinion, I think he was headed to Qumran, and not actually to Syria. So interesting, and he may have, and Paul may have been taught in his 3 years in the wilderness. The teaching that he received may have been out of Qumran, possibly. It's a parallel running theory here. So there's, and I was talking about, there's 4 different ingredients, that were used in the sacrifices and the temple offerings and such. But the Talmud actually refers to, as I understand it, there were a total of 12. There were other things that they were using that just weren't identified in the Old Testament, the Talmud. Well, 9 of these 12 were found in great abundance with the Dead Sea Scrolls. So it's my theory that when the Zadokite priesthood was kicked out of the temple in Jerusalem, they continued to do their daily sacrifice, and that's what some of the Dead Sea Scrolls records. They were keeping records of exactly who was in the rotation, who was doing the offerings each day out of Qumran. Interesting. And what I am sniffing at, and again don't have worked out yet, is in the Newer Testament when they're talking about the temple, I'm wondering if they're always referring to the temple in Jerusalem, or could they have been referring to what existed here in Qumran as a temple? I don't know the answer to that question. So, but it's a question that I, wouldn't mind doing some further research on. So,
It
and,
would not surprise me if it's layers, it's always layers in scriptures.
mhm.
So it could be talking about all of them plus.
Could be talking about, yeah, definitely, could be talking about both. It could be a yes, yes.
Yeah, talking
You know.
about both and talking about our bodies as being the temple.
And that's true too. Yeah, and many times things work in cycles, even though they don't come, it's like looking at it from a 2D standpoint, it looks like it's a complete circle, but looking at it from a helical standpoint, it's on a different plane, if you're looking at it three-dimensionally. So, yeah.
It's like walking up a mountain, going round and
Mhm.
around and around, but you're slowly going up as you're going down.
That's correct.
Down and going up.
Yep. So, and it's interesting that with the Dead Sea Scrolls, that there were, I think, 15 different scrolls, at least fragments. When you say scrolls, they're in fragments, and most of them are just not complete sections. But there were 15 different unique scrolls found of the Book of Jubilees. That far outnumbers some of the other, books found in Tanakh. There were greater numbers of that. And that may show for that group there, if you've got more copies of a particular book, it may show they may consider some books more important than others just by the sheer number that they had. That's just speculation, on my part. So, any questions here? I'm thinking that I'm probably going to want to kind of do a little more Ezra tomorrow, and because I think we got more time. The book of the Didache, probably won't take as much time, but I felt like I needed to give some ground support and to just put a thought in your mind that, maybe it's worth looking at some of these other books. And again, you got to be careful here because there are a lot of Gnostic books out there too. So it's better to start off with things that, I subset, okay, these seem to be tried and proved. But one of the things I'll probably get into tomorrow is talk about Ezra and especially chapters 11 and 12 and how they help you with interpreting Daniel's chapter 2 and chapter 7. The statue and also about the beast, especially the fourth beast. And if you just read Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7, it's still, boy, that can be applied to so many different things. It's almost like they need further explanation. And Second Esdras does give you some help with that. There are some other books too that can help, but as said, I'm still trying to wade through some of these things. I certainly don't have them figured out, but I've got more questions than answers sometimes. But I have found that chapter 11 and chapter 12 of Second Esdras is definitely helping, especially describing the fourth beast. And it's also given me hints and where I can see the Byzantine Empire there, and then also the British Empire. British Empire might be the second beast, but it talks about a third beast. The British Empire may be a description of the first beast. The United States might be described as the second beast, but there's a third beast after the second beast. So as I said, there's interesting additional information there. So we'll take a look. Now, what's neat about Ezra chapter 13, it talks about the homecoming of the lost tribes and them all coming home. So, and at this point, we're about 12 minutes from 10. I don't necessarily want to, there's a whole lot more to dive into. And I don't think it's a good point to.
So we go back and get one?
Yeah, exactly. And the other teachings will be a little warmer,
Yeah.
you know, from a time standpoint. Exactly.